Hi everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Poem of the Day. I apologize, I'm still catching up on many things, so this is going to kind of be a quick one. Please forgive me for being slow to post the videos. It's just there's lots going on. I'm fine, I'm well, but it's just been hard to get these videos up, and I apologize for that. This is a poem by Philip Levine. It's called "The Music of Time," and I believe it's about a revisiting the same place long after he visited it for the first time. So this is "The Music of Time." The young woman, I'm going to start again. The young woman sewing by the window hums a song I don't know. I hear only a few bars, and when the trucks barrel down the broken street, the music is lost. Before the darkness leaks from the shadows of the great cathedral, I see her once more at work, and later hear in the sudden silence of nightfall wordless music rising from her room. I put aside my papers, wash, and dress to eat at one of the seafood places along the great avenues near the port, where later the homeless will sleep. Then I walk for hours in the Barrio Chino, passing the open doors of tiny bars and caves from which the voices of old men bark out the stale anthems of love's defeat. This is the world, I think. This is what I came in search of years ago. Now I can go back to my single room. I can lie awake in the dark, rehearsing all the trivial events of the day ahead. A day that begins when the sun clears the dark spires of someone's God, and I waken in a flood of dust rising from nowhere, and from nowhere comes the actual voice of someone else. Thinking about the title, allegedly there's like a 50-year gap between visiting the same place twice, and that idea of like the music of time is really it's really powerful, I think. I remember the first time I returned to the town I lived in Japan, Nagaoka-kyo, which I know I've been talking about a lot recently, my time in Japan. Every day when the work day was over, the town would play this song Furusato. And it was a song that, if you've been a part of the Japanese exchange, the Nagaoka-kyo delegation of students usually sings it for us. We learn it when we send Arlington students over to Nagaoka-kyo. And it, there's nothing goofy about it. It's a, Furusato means basically like my hometown. And I remember when I went back to visit with Miss Walsh Bradley a year after I left. So I went back on the trip. I believe it was the year after. I'd only been gone a year, and then I went again in 2017, maybe 2018. I can't even remember what year it was. But I went back. I've been back twice since I lived there for 2 years. And at the end of the workday, basically, almost like church bells, they would play, a digitized tone version of Furusato, and it was like, okay, the whole town could hear it. And when I lived there, I heard it every day, and my wife and I, we wouldn't joke about it. It wasn't like a joke. It was just like, interesting, when we would hear Furusato come on. And I remember this, when we landed in, even just in Narita Airport in Tokyo, I remember like feeling a little bit of like a pressure released, because I was returning home in a way. And the feeling, just the smallest noises, right? The noises that a Japanese cash register might make, or the noise that a vending machine might make. It's just so ever so slightly different than in America. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. The small collection of noises and like incidental things you know, it like brought me back in this intense focus rack of even just like the smell of my neighborhood at night, you know, with like the pickled horse mackerel that you know was like a traditional Japanese dish. I did not care for this dish, but I would eat it. Um, and it you know it's one of those sensory things that it just brings you so intensely back to a place. You know, the smell of the saba cooking, the horse mackerel cooking, the sound of, you know, automatic doors sliding open and people welcoming you to a convenience store, the chanting of the fishmonger and the men working in the sort of not off brand, but it was in a way it was off brand. You know, it was Epicot. It was called. The off-brand grocery store, you know, chanting like, "Hey, check this out, check this out. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to serve you." This poem reminded me so much of that, right? Especially at the end, I waken in a flood of dust, right, rising from nowhere, and from nowhere comes the actual voice of someone else. It was like the first day I was back in Nagaoka Kyo and was in town to hear those digitized bells ringing, and it's just, I just remember it felt like in the safest of ways, like just like in a way of like the world didn't stop, but of course it didn't stop, you know, like in so many ways, so many things changed in the time between when I lived there and when I visited a year later, and then another 3 or 4 years later. The world didn't stop, and it shouldn't stop. That's not how the world works. That's not how life works. And it was, this poem captures that for me, I think, a little bit, as for some reason I keep thinking about my time in Japan. Anyways, sorry for ranting. Be well, take care of yourselves, wash your hands, maintain social distance, do the things that have been necessary, because we're trying to keep people safe. All right, I miss everyone. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you tomorrow for another poem of the day. Bye, everyone.